I'm here with the Campus Sustainability Fund. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're really excited to lead this discussion today.
Hey, I'm Michael Diamond. I'm a PhD student in atmospheric sciences and was a member of the Campus Sustainability Fund for 2 years.
Hi everyone, I'm Yahia Ali. I'm heading into my third year here at the UW. I'm studying environmental engineering. I've been with the CSF for about a year now. We really appreciate you all for joining us here today, and to Damon and Torin for having us come in to talk. Today we're just going to have a brief overview of what the Campus Sustainability Fund is, the work we've been doing for the past 10 years, and then for the second half of our discussion, we'll talk about what intersectional sustainability is, how the CSF has been putting it in the forefront of our work, and how it inspired our upcoming summer grant opportunity. So throughout this talk, we're going to be asking some questions as well as giving some time for everyone here to ask questions as well. So please don't be shy to use the chat, and we'll make sure to keep an eye out for anything that comes through. So without further ado, we want to start off by asking everyone what sustainability means to you, or how you all would define sustainability. I'll give you guys a minute here to type that in, maybe think about that to yourselves. Maybe Fatima, I can ask you, maybe put a little bit of a twist on it. What does sustainability mean to you before you joined the CSF or before you came to the UW?
Yeah, so I think before I joined the CSF 2 years ago now, a lot of my understanding of sustainability was related to food and healthy eating and plant-based eating. And ever since I joined the CSF back in sophomore year, my understanding has just expanded, and I've come to understand that it's so complex, and I'm really excited to dig into what that means today as well. And yeah, so if anyone's interested in kind of sharing what that means, we invite you to do that in the chat. If no, that's okay. I can ask Yahia, what does sustainability mean to you before you joined the CSF?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way with you. It was kind of more narrow-minded in thinking that sustainability was more just involved with the stuff you hear about on the news, electric cars, solar panels, stuff like that. But hopefully throughout this presentation and just during my time with the CSF, I've just expanded that so much further than it was when I first started off. So hopefully you all come into this with definitions that will expand as we continue on in this presentation. Oh, it looks like one person typed into the chat. Oh, never mind. That's just us. So like we said, if you guys have anything to say into the chat, feel free to put that in there. So for us, sustainability means being able to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. One job at the CSF is to financially support projects that accomplish this through diverse and innovative approaches. You can see this reflected in our mission statement, which reads, "We're creating a sustainable campus and fostering an intentional and involved university culture by funding student-led interdisciplinary projects that drive equity, resilience, and stewardship on campus."
Looks like someone answered values of social sustainability. Claudia said values of social sustainability. Awesome, that's great. Thank you, Claudia. We'd love to kind of dig into what social sustainability means in this presentation. But before we do that and kind of talk about the work that we've been doing for the past 10 years, I would love to kind of talk about the CSF itself. So what we are at the core is that we have a CSF staff, which is comprised of the grant coordinator, who is Kyle McDermott. He's not here today. We also have the outreach coordinator, that's my job, and we have a project development specialist, who's Yahia's job, and then the graphic designer, and that's Josephine. We all kind of work together and collaborate in forming the team and helping students learn about the CSF and learn to grant write and also implement projects on campus. And we also have our individual jobs, but we also work together. And another important part of the CSF is also the committee, which is comprised of 7 voting members, one being the Student Advisory Board from the OMAD, 3 ASU representatives, 2 GPSS members, 1 Environmental Stewardship Committee member, and other ex officio non-voting members. And this team is really the core of the CSF. They get to really represent the student body and also come together and learn about the grant and learn to and work together to distribute the grant allocations. And at this moment, I would like to invite Michael Damon, who has served as the committee member as a GPSS representative for the past 2 years. We would love to hear about your experience, Michael, in working with the committee.
Thanks, Fatima. So one of my favorite things about the committee is that in my academic program, when I'm doing research, when I'm teaching in atmospheric sciences and climate sciences, I get to talk a lot about the problems of different environmental issues, especially climate change, and also the disproportionate impacts of climate change on certain groups, which we'll talk about later. But I don't really get to focus on solutions. And what I love about the Campus Sustainability Fund is we really do get to focus on and even implement solutions in addition to educational programming. I've always been really inspired to hear the amazing ideas that come to the CSF, and it's a great feeling to not only be able to provide funds to make those a reality, but also to use the expertise on the CSF committee to help those projects improve. And another thing I've been really happy to focus on, and I'm glad that Claudia brought that up, is this idea of social sustainability. So not only does CSF do traditional things like Yahia said, like fund solar panels, but we've also funded different kinds of cultural events. And especially we've been able to fund some projects that both fuse greater environmental sustainability understanding with also greater social sustainability understanding.
Thank you, Michael, for that insight. I would love to next, I would like to talk about our history and who we are at the core. And an important aspect of the CSF is student involvement and leadership. We are student funded and run, and we exist that students can implement their own projects. Looking into our history, in the fall of back in 2009, the UW had just completed their climate action plan, and there was a lot of momentum on campus behind environmental movements. Within the UW Climate Action Plan, there was an idea for student green fee, and a group of students took it upon themselves to organize a grassroots campaign to rally for support, and they were able to gather 5,000 signatures in petitions and 100 RSO endorsements and a widespread of staff and faculty support. The students then brought their proposal to the services activities fee board of directors. And this program was approved for the 2010-2011 school year. And since then, the UW students have continued to, fund this resource. And back in 2018 and 2019 school year, we also began our partnership with the Student Technologies Fee. And annually, we have around $400,000 made available for students to use and utilize for funding and creating student sustainability projects on campus. And one of the most, another aspect of CSF, besides the student leadership, there's a lot of partnership and involvement that we create through the CSF. There's a diversity in academic backgrounds of those who are involved. We have over 280 students directly involved with projects, and we have over 50 active projects currently, and the numbers of involvement and volunteers are increasing. The CSF has also been able to provide a lot of employment opportunities. 137 employment positions were able to be offered, and our volunteers are increasing in our service learning program, which is kind of like a volunteer program that we work with the Carlson Center, where students are able to come to the CSF and volunteer and learn about our kind of like the background of the CSF and work with me to do outreach and marketing work. And that's also a great opportunity for ways in which students can get involved.
Sorry, another important thing that we've been doing recently is we've been committed to supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which are the SDGs, and encouraging project teams to align with these diverse goals in their projects. For those who might not know, the SDGs are a set of 17 goals that call all countries to action in a global partnership. And these goals encompass a vast variety of categories and recognize that some deprivations, such as ending poverty, go hand in hand with climate change. If anyone's interested in hearing more about these goals, you can go to their website, which is sustainabledevelopment.un.org. SDGs, or you can look up SDGs UN on Google. I'm sure you'll find it. At the CSF, we also use these goals as a framework for the metrics that we ask from our project teams. This way, we're able to have data on how the CSF projects are directly making an impact and working towards these sustainable development goals. Over the past 8 years, we've also been able to fund over 200 projects, 50 which are currently active. And together, this amounts to over $3 million in funding, all going to sustainability projects right on campus, which is amazing. Our projects range in size from our mini grants, which can be below $1,000, to our larger projects, which have reached over $150,000. The most recent fiscal year was one of our largest allocations to date, granting over $500,000 to 30 different projects. And this is also coming off a year where some of our projects couldn't receive funding or had to be really creative and resilient with how they used the funding due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the amount of projects funded have been increasing year after year, which is amazing to see that more UW students are engaging with our fund and are able to innovate new sustainability-based projects for our campus. We hope to see this trend continue as our fund is able to gain more exposure and receive more funding. But the most exciting thing about these projects is that they break the traditional mold of sustainability. They reach beyond just the traditional environmental focus, and they encompass arts and culture and our social community. You can find all these projects that we funded in the past on our website, but we want to highlight just a few today and show how sustainability can be achieved in so many different ways.
So one way that we categorize our projects in this presentation is one being like energy, and UW Solar project is a great example of energy. The UW Solar is a student organization who have collaborated with the Perkins plus Will in the UW Biology and have installed a 100 kilowatt solar array on the roof of the Life Sciences building. The solar array will generate approximately 105,000 kilowatts of energy per year. This is the equivalent to removing 158 passenger vehicles from the road per year. Another success about the Life Sciences building in this project is that in 2018, it was announced the Building of the Year by the Seattle Daily Journal of Commerce, and they were able to win from a list of nominees, including the Space Needle, Amazon Sphere. They were able to actually be nominated, be the 2018 Building of the Year. And this is an example of one of the biggest allocations, being $200,000.
Yeah, and addressing economic sustainability as well in the environment is our electric bicycle mail delivery program. This project is the first of its kind on a scale such as the University of Washington, and they're doing so well. So you may have seen these bikes on campus before. They're in the pilot stage of the project's implementation with about 5 electric assist custom cargo bikes, and they're cutting down on delivery time, carbon emissions, and eventually financial costs for the UW mailing services. Since phasing out trucks that run on diesel, deliveries now take 10% less time and 30% fewer miles traveled. And each truck mailing services can remove from its fleet saves nearly $10,000 a year in fuel, insurance, and maintenance costs. Also, these bikes travel an average of 60 miles per week and subsequently save 44 pounds of CO2 every week. This project's been doing so well that even colleges like the University of Miami and even Harvard gave them a call to see how they do it.
Another focus is leadership. I think the African Now is such a great example of what student leadership can look like. So on an annual basis, the African Now mobilizes a community of passionate and active young professionals that are committed to building a sustainable future for Africa and enriching their global perspective through panels, workshops, resource fairs, and networking. African Now is a group of outstanding individuals working to advance intersectional sustainability. The 2020 African Now Conference has had a successful turnout for the 3rd year in a row. The conference exists to educate, organize, and mobilize youth to imagine and create a sustainable future for global African community. This year's conference focused on the COVID-19 relief and the environmental sustainability. They have shown much resilience from switching to in-person conference to a webinar style, and also, but at the same time, they were able to have such a successful turnout and impact.
Yeah, we've also had projects focused on culture and the arts. So back in 2019, the UW Vocal Theater Workshop presented in the Northwest premiere of Hydrogen Jukebox, which was composed by Philip Glass. This music theater piece presents issues of social and environmental justice and sustainability that America has grappled with in recent decades. The students in the School of Music were able to put on an amazing show and display themes of environmental degradation, social injustice, and war. And lastly, we want to talk about the Gould Hall Green Wall, which dates back to our early days as an organization. Its feasibility study was approved in our very first funding year back in 2010. This project is also one of our larger projects, coming in at over $100,000. This project is still active and can be seen in the small park space next to Gould Hall. This project incorporates biodiversity with innovative engineering in a rainwater harvesting system, which then serves to water the green wall. In fact, the student leads of this project are working with PAE engineering firm to redesign and implement a new system that will help sustain this project for even longer.
So through these projects, we are really cultivating student leadership and professional development skills, just going beyond creating a project, allowing for students to get more out of their experience. Through project development and project delivery, students are able to gain hands-on technical design experience, project planning experience, grant writing, budgeting, stakeholder engagement, sustainable development, project management, organizational leadership, communication, marketing, event planning, measuring impacts, and performance standards.
So how do you get a CSF grant? Well, here's how it works. So it all starts with an idea, and that idea is submitted to the CSF committee in the form of a letter of intent, or an LOI, during one of our 3 major funding cycles per year. Potential projects typically meet with us at the CSF and other stakeholders prior to writing the LOI, just to make sure that they're on track and meet the criteria the committee is looking for. After this, the project team writes a full proposal in response to any questions the committee may have had earlier. They present this to the committee and then wait approval and funding. After funding has been allocated, the CSF continues to work with these projects throughout implementation and assist you guys on visibility on campus and providing support wherever it's needed. That's it. And then for our mini grants, if the amount is requested under $1,000, that's when we consider it a mini grant, and we accept proposals anytime during the year and doesn't even require a full proposal. Once your letter of intent's been approved, you receive the funding. At the beginning of this talk, we had asked you all earlier how you may define what sustainability is. So now that we've talked about what the CSF is and what we do, does anyone want to maybe type in the chat and talk about how sustainability has changed, or how their definition of sustainability has changed? And maybe Fatima, kind of the same thing. Maybe how has sustainability changed since you came to the CSF over time?
Yeah, I think just kind of going over some of the project ideas, I think we were able to see how multidimensional and holistic sustainability can be seen as. And it really is a solution to these multiple problems that are related to the environment. And it really incorporates a lot of aspects of society and an individual's experience. And I think that just showcased that almost anything that you experience as an individual, you're able to kind of put that in the direction of sustainability and say, hey, this is one way, this is a solution that is created through sustainability, and it can be answered. And I think we do have something on the chat. Jim Gallo, yes, well, we were asked that if we were able to share the presentation, we will make sure to share the presentation at the end with everybody. And they also said sustainability has to include social equity and environmental justice. Otherwise, it is not sustainable for everybody. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Well said there.
Yeah, I agree. And Fatima, what you said was incredibly powerful too. You know, when I first came to the CSF, I mentioned earlier that I thought it was all just about, like, we hear on the news typically about solar panels and stuff, but just working with so many projects that are focused on sustainability and other aspects has really opened my eyes, and hopefully it opened your eyes as well, to everyone here. These are all great definitions, and it's clear to see how sustainability goes past just electric cars and solar panels. It looks like someone else typed in the chat, Jonathan, while sustainability can focus on improving the environment, it ultimately improves the living environment for everyone and everything. Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. That's incredibly true. So at this time, we want to use the remainder of our discussion in exploring the understanding of intersectional sustainability, our group's evolutionary understanding of the term and the movement behind it. In the recent years, the CSF staff and committee has made the conscious and intentional decision to lead the CSF towards intersectional sustainability. Besides our commitment to supporting the UN's SDGs that I mentioned earlier and encouraging these diverse goals in their project, as an organization, we acknowledge that racial equity is in the forefront of sustainability and see that environmental racism is a topic that many sustainability movements have failed to address and include. So just like before, I want to ask you all to think and respond to these questions of what is intersectionality and how does it relate to you in environmental justice? Fatima, do you have anything to add to that or any answers?
Yeah, so we're kind of inviting everyone to kind of think about our next slide. So we're really highlighting what intersectionality is, and that was the name of this webinar, Investing in Intersectional Sustainability. And I think for me, when I think about intersectionality, I think about everything really intersecting. If anyone is interested in or wanting to kind of share what their understanding is, please, we're more than welcome to do so. I'll just give you guys a couple of seconds if anyone is up to doing that. But what do you think intersectionality is, Yahia?
I think you said it perfectly with everything having to intersect. You know, if you can think of it as everything needs to be running smoothly in order for everything to be fair for everyone and for the sustainability of the environment, even if it's social sustainability, for it to run smoothly. We're going to talk about a little bit the history of intersectionality and how the CSF has been working towards that in just a little bit. But I think just some of the definitions that we saw of what sustainability is includes intersectionality, even if it doesn't include the term in its definition. So Austin says, want to point out that intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, Black woman and legal scholar. That's amazing that you say that, because that's going to be in our very next slide. So we appreciate that, Austin. So yeah, thank you all for answering. I want to shift the dialogue over now to Fatima to give more context of the history of intersectionality and how we at the CSF has been focusing on the movement behind it.
Yeah, so, you know, as Yahia mentioned, as an organization, we have been engaging in this discussion and understanding our values of incorporating intersections into the climate justice movement. So expanding it to be more intersectional. So what does it mean? The term was coined by a Black feminist lawyer, yes, Austin, by Kimberly William Crenshaw back in 1989, to illustrate the experience of racism and sexism of Black women in the United States. Intersectionality has since then become an analytical tool for looking at how different power structures interlink, function, and impact on people's experiences. This is a framework for understanding the ways that multiple aspects of identity intersect, influence one another, and compound to create a unique experience. It describes the ways in which societal privilege and oppression is complicated by the different parts of our identity that is marginalized or privileged in society. And although the term was coined and has started gaining recognition much recently, third world feminists composed of Black queer women have been incorporating intersectionality into the forefront of their movements in liberation. An example is the Combahee River Collective, founded by Black feminists and lesbians in Boston in 1974, and is best known for the Combahee River Collective Statement, which is cited as one of the first groups to begin to address the intersections of different forms of oppression as a working theory. The founding members include Barbara Smith, Beverly Smith, Denisha Fraser, and other activists. The Combahee River Collective Statement was instrumental in highlighting the exclusion of Black lesbian women faced from feminist or mainstream movements, white feminist or mainstream movements, and the civil rights movements, where addressing their particular needs as Black lesbians was failed. They were instrumental in pinpointing the experience of facing multiple oppressions and exclusions. So it is important to recognize that queer, Black, trans, and Indigenous people have been an important part of the narrative of oppressive systems in the United States. The sustainability movement has also historically excluded the perspective of marginalized groups and overemphasized the concerns of the most privileged. Thus, an understanding of intersectionality is important for attaining a truly inclusive vision of sustainability, allowing us to understand and act on the complexity of environmental justice and solutions. Through this, we are understanding the complexity of climate change, disproportionate ways it affects communities of color, and communities in developing countries. So what does it look like? As a part of the evolution of the CSF, we are committed to having discussions and actions on environmental racism, racial, economic, gender, and political exclusion. Since 2017, the CSF has actively worked to invest in both environmental and social sustainability by making its grant more accessible to groups focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and helping generate cultural empowerment, preservation, and expression. With the direct outreach to underinvested groups, updates to our proposal criteria, and diversification of our committee and staff, we have evolved from funding 3 diversity and equity projects in the past 6 years to 27 projects in the past 4 years.
So Fatima, if you don't mind me jumping in here, since you've been a part of the CSF for 2 years now, and you're going to be a senior next year, what are some challenges in the environmental world that you and or the CSF has faced at UW?
Wow, thanks for asking that question, Yahia. So appropriate. I think kind of switching and evolving with the intersectionality aspect of sustainability, incorporating these, issues and these important factors, we have been facing a lot of some bureaucratic challenges. It has been difficult gathering support from a broad range of student bodies and also the UW culture to be on board with talking about looking into social sustainability. This can speak to the limited curriculum where students are not getting an education on the evolving and needed nature of sustainability. Many are not familiar with the UN sustainability goals or what intersectionality is, and those are the things that push for a holistic and equity approach of sustainability. And so that can be one reason, and those are some challenges as an organization we've been facing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also want to mention really quickly, as a part of our efforts, we've been really reaching out to other organizations to really get a broad spectrum. We've reached out to the Resilience Lab as a partnership to really get more of these intersectional sustainability projects going. So now I want to invite Michael back in to briefly talk about our new summer funding opportunity, which is focused solely on intersectional sustainability. So Michael, you can take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Yahia and Fatima, for that introduction. And yeah, as we were saying, this really came out of the recognition of disproportionate ways in which environmental problems like air pollution and climate change affect Black communities. We've seen this in the news really well, always, but also really recently in terms of the disparate effect of COVID-19 on different groups, especially Black communities. And I don't know if anyone else has like New York Times alerts or anything on your phone, but I woke up this morning to an alert that there's a study out just today that maternal mortality is really a lot higher in Black communities, in part because of air pollution and also heat because of climate change. So recognizing that there are those disproportionate impacts, and also recognizing the historic exclusion from broad sustainability efforts, which also was dramatized recently with an incident in Central Park that's led to a lot of discussions, and the hashtag Birding While Black movement, et cetera. So also, maybe even more prominently, the recent events of the great movements against police violence have only brought the importance of intersectionality to a more direct focus. In light of these events, we are partnering with the UW Resilience Lab to issue a call for proposals that will solicit projects that will educate the UW community and spark dialogue, particularly about proposed solutions to environmental and social problems that have a disproportionately negative impact on Black and Indigenous communities. In particular, we're interested in proposals that touch on themes of police reform and accountability, and environmental justice, and its relation to COVID-19 vulnerability, as two big issues that have come up recently, and on solutions that can be implemented on the campus or city level. The CSF committee has earmarked $25,000 for these proposals, which is really awesome. We can issue grants up to $3,000. More details are going to be coming in the upcoming weeks. If you're interested in being part of the committee that's currently coming up with the exact call and application, or if you'd like more information about applying for a project, please leave your emails down below in the chat, or email us directly at uwcsf@uw.edu. We can post that in the chat as well. We also have some time for any questions you might have now about this new call.
Yeah, we want to open up to the rest of the time for any questions, discussions, and this can be about anything regarding the CSF, intersectional sustainability, specifically this new funding cycle that Michael has brought up, or quite frankly, anything that someone wants to ask for any of us or discuss about. Well, we'll keep an eye out on the chat for anything. And if you have any questions, like we said, you can email us at uwcsf@uw.edu. That was posted in the chat. I want to thank, oh yeah.
I would also like to just emphasize that we will be reaching out, creating more like outreach material and reaching out about our summer funding opportunity. And, you know, again, emphasizing like if you would like to leave your emails, we can incorporate that into the message, and you'll be able to hear more about the grant opportunity. And I think there's a chat here.
It looks like someone asked a question here. Fatima, do you want to read it?
Yeah, so it's from Isaac. I hope I'm pronouncing everything right. I want the name right. Is the hope that these projects from this funding would happen over the summer, or would the funds also be allowed to be conduct projects in the fall? From my understanding, I think the question is yes. I think if your project is going to be continuing on in the fall, I think the allocations would work. But we do have a fall funding cycle, which is due on September 1st. So there's plenty of options. But Michael, what do you think? Do you think if a student would apply now to the summer funding opportunity, but they want to create the project in the fall, would the funding work?
I think that would definitely be possible, although, so we're hoping to have the application go out the end of this month and have funding decisions start to be made at the end of July. So I think we will be prioritizing things that could happen as soon as possible, like August or September. I wouldn't rule out something being funded further along, but I think the most competitive applications will be things that can keep this conversation going over the summer into the fall, especially because the summer is often when things like this kind of taper off and lose momentum. If we get a really good set of applications over the summer, I'm hoping that something like that an initiative like this might continue into the fall as well.
Yeah, just like you all have said, I mean, this issue is not just a summer issue. This is something that we hope to continue into the fall and into the future years. And as Fatima mentioned, we have our fall funding cycle, which allows for any sustainability project, anyone to request money up to any amount of funding, not just restricting to $3,000, but we really wanted to set aside $25,000 in this case towards specifically intersectional sustainability projects. And we mentioned some other projects in the past that maybe were funded in the fall cycle, but you know, they're still active today, and your project doesn't necessarily just have to be for the quarter. Looks like we have another question, which is, do you have any recommendations of good books or other resources that further explore intersectional sustainability? Fatima, you're a bigger reader than I am. Do you have any books, or Michael, do you have any books?
I think maybe kind of looking into books that explore environmental racism. I don't have a book in mind that is like specifically talking about intersectionality. But I think when there's a discussion about environmental racism, then you can really have a clear idea of how those issues are actually impacting the concerns of marginalized communities way more than those who are privileged. And the fact that like sustainability movements in the past have been very much so meeting the needs of those privileged, not those who need it the most. So I don't think I have books, but I would love to kind of explore with you, or maybe if I do find a book, I'll let you know.
I can give one book recommendation that wouldn't explicitly be about intersectional sustainability. It was written a little while ago, but I think really gets on these topics. And I'll also just put out a plug that I love reading history books. And I think that often reading histories, even if they're not necessarily framed in that way, can give you a lot of insight into these issues. So the book recommendation I'll leave, and I'll try to leave it in the chat as well, is called Rising Tide, The Great Mississippi Flood of 1927 and How It Changed America by John Barry. And this is about something that was really important in American history, but a lot of people don't know about, this really devastating flood down the Mississippi that displaced and killed thousands of primarily African-American farmers who were actually not allowed to leave the area because the people who were overseeing them wanted to keep their labor force in place. But there's a lot of really interesting nuance around this. It goes all the way through the modern management of the Mississippi and the changing of its natural course to a more human managed one, and how that's affected peoples along there, and how the political ramifications of this flood actually continue to affect America today. So that's the one that came to the top of my head, but I'm sure there are other really good ones out there.
I do know that there's also a webinar today, later, I forget from which organization, but it's specifically talking about environmental racism. And I think I can find that resource now, and it's at like 6 p.m. I think, and it's like in celebration of, I think Juneteenth. And I also have this really cool, I think it was like a podcast, yeah, about environmental sustainability and social justice, and I'll just put it in here. And also thank you, Michael, for sharing about that book. I've never actually heard about it. Okay, so there's a lot more questions here. Okay.
Yeah, so we got a question that says, could we talk a little bit more about how the types of project applications have changed over time and how we've worked to encourage more projects related to diversity and equity? That's a great question. So I think I've only been here for about a year, but working with projects that were funded prior to me joining the CSF, I see a pretty big evolution of focusing on projects that are more oriented to smaller things that maybe you don't think right off the top of your head that are involved in sustainability, but do have an impact, such as these events or things that we're able to fund, or even things that aren't as fancy or anything as such as like a solar panel, you know. And we mentioned the life sciences building, which is obviously like really cool. They got the building of the year, which is amazing. And it's really like a staple of what you would think of maybe of sustainability is, but you know, working with Africa Now and seeing how they've evolved so well over the past 3 years and really becoming their own identity, even working with other events that we were able to work with this year in the past few years, just really seeing how these projects are more oriented to how different communities are able to make an impact and such. Fatima, do you have any projects off the top of your head, or how project applications have changed?
Yeah, so I think one way that we've been really like kind of encouraging more diversity and equity is by like our specific targeted outreach for less invested groups, and our partnerships with the ECC, and broader discussions about equity and inclusion in our committee and in our team itself. And I think how and to answer the question of like how project applications have changed, I think the project applications haven't necessarily changed like the way it's written. I think we are able to really, through our questions, we're able to really apply and understand that social sustainability is in the forefront of environmental justice, and that when we do come to talk to students who aren't necessarily involved with the sustainability movements on campus, when I do like targeted outreach, when I go out to the ECC, when I try to reach to my colleagues who represents communities of color, I try to do like, hey, like what you're doing this is social sustainability, and you totally deserve to learn more about what we do, and we'd love to partner with you. So it really is like kind of going out to the community and trying to kind of ask ourselves, like, is our committee, is our staff representing the student body of each student body? And I think that way, that application process might changed over time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I also want to mention that going back to our mission statement that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's really evolved over time, and we really try to sit down at the beginning of the year and have as many conversations as a staff and as a committee and see can our mission statement encompass everything that we want to encompass. And we're able to ask different questions as we get more project applications, and we're able to see just more of what kind of impact different projects are going to have outside of maybe what we would have thought coming into the CSF. Just being able to work with so many different groups that are more oriented on things that aren't just the basic term of sustainability. We're able to ask different questions and really push the narrative to different directions that we might not have seen, and really see success out of it and see projects focus on things that maybe they didn't think of coming in first. At the end of the day, these are students and we're all learning together. These are all student funded projects. So being able to bounce off each other and learn from different backgrounds and things is really amazing. And I think that's how we've been able to really see how projects have changed over time. And like I mentioned before, in encouraging more projects related to diversity and equity, we've been able to partner with the UW Resilience Lab, and we've been able to partner with reoccurring projects and have outreach, like the team has said, and really reach different aspects of campus that maybe wouldn't have been thought of at first.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was a great question. Does anyone else have any questions about the CSF or anything else?
For like posting these resources, and I'm trying to read through all the questions.
Yeah.
I'll just give a shout out. Audrey posted a really interesting looking book, and the author of that book, BJ Cummings, has agreed to serve as an advisor for the new summer committee on intersectional sustainability. So it's really awesome to see that connection there.
Oh wow, that's awesome! Thank you. In addition, there's also a today at 5 p.m. another webinar talking about the role of environmentalists have played in white supremacist systems, and it's a Juneteenth discussion. So I'll be joining that later today. That's also a really awesome resource.
Where can you access that other than the link that you sent in, maybe for anyone who's tuning in on YouTube later on?
Oh yeah, well it's today, so
Well.
I don't know, maybe I can send it out in an email if you guys are interested. And I think it seems like it's open still.
Who's hosting it? Do you know?
I got it on an email. Citizens for Healthy Bay, I think. I got this in an email from like the UW Sustainability emails.
And yeah, for anyone who's joining in, definitely go check that out. I didn't hear about that, so I'll do my best to check that out later today. That sounds really cool. So it looks like the College of the Environment's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office also put together a reading list on environmental justice. So you can check that out at the website that's in the chat, but it's also on green.uw.edu. And I think you can look up like recommended resources. So that's awesome.
Oh yeah, we got it from Jim Gowell. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you guys for everyone just like sharing resources. This is really awesome. I'm excited to dig through all of this too.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, we're able to really like listen to each other and bounce off ideas of each other. And that's what I mentioned. It's all about intersectionality, how everyone's able to just come together and really show different parts of their background and come together, which is awesome. I guess I'll start wrapping things up here, and maybe some more questions and comments will come in, more resources. But I wanted to thank everyone for coming to listen to us speak, and again to the UW Sustainability Office for putting this all together. We hope you were able to take away things you might not have known about heading into this. We at the CSF are going to continue to look forward and continue to be a resource for students on campus, while also being aware of the aspects of sustainability that aren't always thought of at first. There are a lot of ways to get involved with the CSF, so if you're interested, please reach out to us through email and our website. Here's our social media platforms, so you can like us, follow us, sign up for our quarterly newsletter, which is where we're able to really show off some resources and a little bit of updates on our projects. Check out all our announcements on past projects on the website as well. Looks like we got a couple thank yous. So like I said, thank you all for coming out. It really means a lot. So that's about it, unless anyone has any other questions.
Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to say that, again, we have been recording this. We will be posting it on the UW Sustainability site, as well as the UW Sustainability YouTube and Facebook pages. When we get this posted, I will try to include links to the presentation slides, as well as some of the resources, the reading lists and different resources that were shared in the chat here. So that will be hopefully available so everyone can follow those links, and that'll be posted there if you didn't have a chance to grab it out of the chat. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to Fatima, Yahia, and Michael for the great presentation. And we are planning on having more of these sustainability story events virtually throughout the summer. So stay tuned to UW Sustainability's website and social media, and we'll be announcing all of the upcoming events soon. So thank you again to everybody for joining, and thank you to all of our presenters, and have a good day.